All right, everybody, welcome to what are we? KINE 4327 Biomechanics. Today, I have the pleasure of bringing on one of my buddies who happens to have a really cool job, but he's got a background that comes from the areas that most of us also come from and what you're currently working on and studying right now. So I'd like to introduce you to Alek Diffendaffer. Now he works for the San Francisco Giants, and we'll go ahead and get started in this little interview, and hopefully you find it informational and it can help you get to your career goals as well. All right, Alek, welcome. And
thank you, Brian. Thanks for having me.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, where you went to school, kind of degrees you have, all of that kind of educational background.
Okay. Yeah. My name is Alek Diffendaffer. I originated from Colorado, grew up there, went to high school there. Once I graduated there, I went on to Hastings College in Hastings, Nebraska, and I got my undergraduate degree in exercise science. I played football there and enjoyed my time. And then after graduating there, I went on to the University of Nebraska, Omaha, and studied alongside Brian. I got my master's. He got his PhD there. And I was focused a lot on biomechanics and did a lot of gait pathology research and the different types of things there with that. And then after graduating with my master's, I went on and got my first job out of grad school at Shriners Hospital for Children up in Erie, Pennsylvania. Continued my work in gait pathology, worked a lot with children with spina bifida, cerebral palsy. I did a little bit of distance runners, some different things of that nature, and then got my kind of first little exposure to baseball biomechanics. They were doing a research project up there, and I got to tag along and do some data processing and different things like that for them. Following working at Shriners, I got the opportunity to go down to the American Sports Medicine Institute in Birmingham, Alabama, and that was my second job. And I worked primarily there in sports biomechanics, baseball biomechanics more particularly. I did a lot of baseball biomechanics research for pitchers, for injury risk, performance enhancement, different things of that nature. Got a lot of good exposure, worked under Dr. Glenn Fleisig, who's one of the gurus in baseball biomechanics. So got a lot of good experience and knowledge working alongside him. And I worked there for 6 years, I believe it was. And then just in the last couple of months, I got the opportunity to join on with San Francisco Giants, and I'm the biomechanist here.
Very cool. So you've traveled a bit. I forget that you worked at Shriners. I guess it was such a terrible place to live for you that I blocked it out of my mind that you were up there too.
It was a good first job. Erie was a lot of snow. We didn't go outside very much, so the opportunity to go down where it was a little bit warmer was attractive for sure.
Yeah, Northeast Pennsylvania was such a terrible time for me too that I forget that I worked there sometimes, and I definitely forget that you were up there. So I just associate you with Alabama. Now you're down in Arizona. Right. All right. So I guess you kind of touched on the next thing I have for you is where you're working right now, and kind of the journey it took to get there. So professionally, you worked Children's Hospital doing pathological gait with kids and got a taste of sports, and then went down with the big boys down at ASMI in Birmingham. We're doing real sport and real sports research. So that's really cool. So working at the Giants, tell us a little bit about, as a biomechanist for the SF Giants, what do you do? Like what do you do in biomechanics, and what does a kind of a typical day look like for you?
Yeah, so working as a biomechanist for the Giants, really I'm kind of focused on player development on kind of one side of things. Obviously, I'm housed in Arizona, so do a lot of player development as far as biomechanics goes for performance, for injury prevention, injury risk, those types of things. But then for the big league side of things, biomechanics questions get directed my way, so I'll answer things, if coaches or coordinators or whoever's picking something out that they're seeing, they'll direct those questions to me, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. So kind of on all fronts of the major league side, minor league system side, just really trying to answer questions on how these guys are moving, how we can help them move better, how we can continue to push for player advancement, for making them perform better on the field, perform longer, as far as durability and those types of things go. So it's kind of my day to day. Again, it changes day to day with whatever I have going on here as far as player development goes, or I could be getting things coded for future analyses and getting data just really piped out for our coaches, coordinators, etc.
So you could say then that you're directly responsible for the revival this year, Brandon Crawford, Buster Posey, and Brandon Belt, and those old guys.
I cannot take credit for those guys. I joined on way too late to be able to do any of that nature. So
cool. Okay, so coming from biomechanics and more generally exercise science program, and we can lump kinesiology in there as a related field or umbrella field that's very similar to exercise science or sports science. What are some common myths that you hear about your job or what we do or where we come from as kind of our background in kinesiology, exercise science?
I don't know which way you're kind of asking that question. Are you asking, with this degree, what do people think we can do, or what with this degree, what do people think that we do? I mean, I guess that's
you can touch on it from both sides of things, like just the general perception of what is it that we do, like with an exercise science degree, versus what are we truly capable of.
Yeah, I think that with the general exercise science, there's a lot of just different routes you can take, and it's really more dependent upon the drive of the person that's really wanting to do something. My goal for my entire career, even going through grad school, is to work in sports, and knowing that something just wasn't going to fall into my lap coming right out of graduation with my undergrad degree or even my master's degree, just being able to gain the knowledge and gain the experiences that you need to then continue to push to where you want to be. So I think that's kind of one of the first myths that I always instruct people who I've mentored in the past is all the times a job that you're wanting in this field may not be the first job that you take. In my example, I went to Shriners Hospital and worked with children in pathological gait. Then, going on to ASMI was just like the next stepping stone to then where I'm at currently today. But in the exercise science field, again, there's different avenues to go down. But biomechanics was the one that I chose because I wanted to be able to help athletes move better, perform better, and be able to really quantify the movements, not just, qualitatively give them, hey, you look like you've changed the way that you walk or the way that you run or the way that you throw or the way that you swing. So biomechanics really kind of tying the physics with human anatomy and the actual mechanical properties has kind of been a passion of mine. So that's kind of what's led me down this path. I don't know. Is there anything else that you're wanting out of that question?
That's okay. Good. Just a follow-up to that is, so many of my students here won't know what or where Omaha is, for one, that you went to Omaha and got your master's degree in exercise science with the concentration or really a focus all in biomechanics. Mm-hmm. Tell us a little bit about that program and how maybe like how much sport were you involved in when you were in Omaha, and do you think that was beneficial to you to achieving your long-term career goals?
Yeah, I think Omaha was, again, a major stepping stone for me just in the field of biomechanics. I mean, me coming out, I took a general biomechanics course in my undergraduate course load and, just got a taste of things. But really going to Omaha was really where the principles and the coding and the computer science kind of technical background is really where I got the most exposure to being able to really apply what I'm doing right now. Because while I get to do, motion captures and those types of things, the coding side and, the different programming that we're having to do to get, data into the queries or whatever it may be, that's where I think Omaha really set aside, putting at least the course load in front of me that is most beneficial for me kind of going down this path. But just the biomechanics course load itself was also, allow me to gain knowledge and experience and all those types of things, let alone, being able to be involved in a lab setting as a TA, and, even the undergraduates at University of Nebraska Omaha, like you're trying to build at your school now, being able to have experience in an actual lab setting, putting markers on, running the cameras, tracking data, processing data, all those things are really valuable in getting people to where they may want to be in later on in their career.
So to just kind of let you guys know a little bit about Nebraska Omaha and our program that we had there in biomechanics, is we basically weren't allowed to touch sport. Our director was all about bringing in grant funding, and for the most part, if you want to do sports research, you're not going to be funded. If you want to get in industry, that's a different story. But from an academic perspective, sports research doesn't really get funded. So we weren't allowed to do it, even though many of us are really interested in sport. And that's how we kind of got into the area of biomechanics, from that original interest in sports. But Alek went there and was able to get his master's degree and learned a lot of valuable skills, not necessarily dealing with sports directly, but those skills have transitioned to later life. So if you're thinking about professional school or graduate school and you've got a career goal that's way out here, and you might be able to take an opportunity where you can learn something, you take that, and that'll help you get to that eventual career goal. So that's it's definitely something. Like Omaha was maybe the worst 4 years of my life, just working there and how hard they ran us into the ground. But through the end of it, I'm the skills and the different lessons that I learned, like you can probably calculate internal joint works off the top of your head now, based off of that solving that MATLAB code that we were looking at there for a little while. But yeah, the skills that I got there, there's no way that I would want to be in a program that's like that professionally as an academic. But I would not be where I am right now without what I learned in those 4 years and working with good people like yourself. Okay, so let's see, where was I? So what's a lesson that you've only been in it with San Francisco for a little bit, so you can go back off of maybe ASMI a little bit and your experiences that you had there. But what's a lesson that your job has taught you that you think everyone should learn at some point in their life?
I think the biggest thing is time management, and then really just pursuing what you're passionate about. While I was at ASMI, I gained again a lot of valuable experience, but at the same time, I wanted to just make a little bit deeper of an impact. When I was at ASMI, we would do evaluations. I did a lot of research, got a lot of experience, but didn't impact people as much as I really wanted to. So, that was one of my passions, is really being able to impact an individual, a team, an organization, whatever it is. And that's really what's led me to here. So really kind of, I know it's a kind of a cheesy saying, and it actually comes from my undergrad, is pursuing your passion. And I guess I kind of lived that out. Is I wanted to make an impact in a sports world, in the sports organization, team, etc., and continue to just push forward. And I think that's just always a lesson for people. And while there may be stepping stones that you may not be the biggest fan of, they are stepping stones looking back, and they've gotten me to where they are, and they'll probably do the same thing for your students there as well.
Yeah, it's definitely good. If my wife ends up watching this, she'll probably yell at me because I'm not very good at putting this into practice, but really like pursuing your passion. So with that, you could set a goal. This is where I want to be, and then really task out what it's going to take to get there, and always working towards those tasks that are going to get you towards your goal. And so that's where that time management thing that you touched on there. So you can allocate your time and make sure you're not wasting time or doing things, sitting on YouTube when you should be, doing something else that's going to get you towards your goal. But yeah. I'm pretty bad at that. I set goals, but then time management and spending time on YouTube, that's kind of my thing. So
yeah, that's right.
All right. So working in professional sports and acquiring the expertise you had, and when you were at ASMI, also you were dealing with professional athletes and you're working in a professional setting. So you can touch on that too. But what's kind of the most important personality trait or strength that you say coming out is going to draw interest from an organization that's going to help you get into working with sports or something along those lines?
Yeah, I think being self-driven, self-motivated is kind of two, but also being able to have efficient communication skills. I felt like I've always kind of worked on my communication skills, being able to present data, to be able to know my audience. That's one of the biggest things that I've learned, throughout my time at ASMI and taking it into here is knowing my audience, know who I'm talking to. If I'm talking to a player, can I throw my ball cap on and talk their lingo? Or if I'm talking to another biomechanist or, a research analyst here, I can actually get into, numbers and stats and data and all sorts of things. But, really being able to communicate effectively and efficiently is what I've continued to work on to be able to get, biomechanical principles across to somebody who may not know what shoulder abduction or shoulder external rotation or horizontal abduction or whatever it may be, being able to explain things, get the message across that's most important for them. So I've kind of taken that always as something to continue to push forward and continue to work on is my communication with the different audiences. Again, even our coordinators and coaches have different terms. So just learning your audience really to know what terms to be using at that time.
Yeah, I'm trying to teach biomechanics of baseball to 4 or 5 year olds playing t-ball. That's right. Doesn't go so well. All right. What was the worst college class you ever took?
Oh, well, for me, I would probably have to say calculus 2 because I did not do very well at it, and that was in grad school. So I even got to withdraw from that one because it wasn't handling it to the best that I could. So that was probably my worst.
So you
I think second to that is chemistry. Chemistry was undergrad, so chemistry and me didn't get along too well.
So those of you struggling through biomechanics right now and the math and that goes along with it, don't be too discouraged because you could struggle with math concepts and still end up working for a professional sports team. So.
That's true. I think it was Calc 3. I think it was Calc 3.
It was probably probably Calc 2. Calc 2 is harder than Calc 3.
I remember.
You had Calc 2, you had the stupid weird shapes that you calculate an area on and use like the washer method and all that stuff. And
maybe it was. I don't know.
Calc 3 makes more sense because it's more like mechanical engineering dynamics, like where you're three-dimensional derivatives and stuff. It's not as hard as the weird integrals.
Maybe it was too then. Yeah. So second that was chemistry. Chemistry was no fun.
Okay, just a couple more questions. What's your favorite or most influential book that you've read?
Oh, wow. Most influential book that I have read. What's the, I'm blanking off the top of my head, where it's talking about the hours of repetitive practice.
The Epstein?
I can't think of it.
Is that the Epstein book?
No, it's, I can drop them off the top of my head. It's literally labeled.
That one's yeah.
I just read
he talks
a year or so ago.
Epstein in his book, which is Outliers, talks about that concept.
It was Outliers. It was Outliers. I read that again just recently, and again just enjoyed it because it was talking about like hockey players in their birth months of these guys born in this time frame were elite versus even guys born 3 months later. Like it was just
whatever sport you want your kid to play in, make sure you're birthing them right after the cutoff so that they're the oldest in their age group.
Yep. I just read that one again, so I've enjoyed it.
So you were, I think, originally thinking of Gladwell. Malcolm Gladwell, which is the 10,000 hours of practice to make you an expert. but then
Okay.
outliers.
I have read that one as well, but yes, outliers. I like outliers just because it's a little bit easier of a read and just kind of go through it.
Yeah, those are both good books. All right, so let's see. One last question, and then the other one's kind of on you. So what advice do you have for an undergraduate student that is interested in working in professional sports?
Ooh. So again, I'm going to say get involved and get yourself in right positions and with right instructors to guide you down those paths. Because again, just in my experiences, as well as a few of our other friends from, Omaha, we all did not get a job in sports out of undergrad, even out of our master's program. It was our second, third, sometimes fourth job, down the line. I think it's just continue to get yourself educated in what you're interested in, and then, continue to push it forward. And, for my intent of purpose of, describing this to your students, if they're interested really in kind of like the early stages of their schooling, if they're interested in biomechanics or something like that, also tag on some computer science. I've ran across quite a few people that I've been a mentor of that have even struggled with some of the basic just computer life skills. And so being able to really get a computer science almost like secondary learning path also will allow you other avenues and along the lines of biomechanics to also, get into the sports realm.
Well, thanks, Alek. You just scared away all the students. So they're out of here.
Well, no. I'm just if it was me again and I could get biomechanics and also push myself a little bit further into the programming and the computer science, I wouldn't have had to spend the last 7 years continuing to build as much. I'm just putting it out there if they're wanting to get the computer science along with, the biomechanics, kinesiology, exercise science route, and you're pretty much good to go for making impact in some sort of sports realm. Wow.
Yeah, I'd say having my programming background that I had prior to even going into kinesiology as an undergrad was very, very valuable, because the programming that we're doing as biomechanists, especially if you stay in MATLAB, it's pretty simple when it's broken down compared to like app development and some of those other things that it makes a lot of sense when you start handling variables and doing other things that maybe don't if you don't have that background. Like I remember you just barely picking up MATLAB and stuff, and the struggles.
Right. I mean, you were helping me throughout most of that. So, debugging and all the above. So that's, I guess, what I'm saying is if we can get a little bit of computer science and then, take some courses from you, I think they'd set people up for greater success in the field of biomechanics, kinesiology.
Help with getting that first foot forward anyway, and get you the leg up on the competition, because a lot of people that are going into sports aren't going to have that background. So that's good advice. Okay, last question is, what's a question that I didn't ask you that you wish I would have?
Ooh.
And then you have to answer it.
Then I have to answer. I think. Okay, here it is. What's the most enjoyable part of my job currently?
Okay.
Answer. Being able to work with professional athletes and then being able to see those impacts, whether it be immediately or a week later or even a year later. That's kind of like my dream of being able to see what I'm doing and how it's impacting a team, an organization, a player, etc. So that's my question. That's my answer.
Good.
And anything else that you want to fire at me, feel free.
Well, I just expect you to get Luciano up to the majors next year and be the MVP caliber athlete that he should be. So you need to analyze whatever he's doing, and if there are holes, you need to fix them and get him up to the big leagues.
All right, we'll take that.
All right. All right. Well, everybody, thanks for listening. Thank you, Alek, for taking the time to talk with me so that my students might be able to get some information that can help them along to hopefully accomplishing their career goals.
Yeah, well, appreciate it. Thanks for the invite. It's been great.
All right. All right.